Over the last few days, there have been several, I suppose, extraordinary claims about the Cato Manor police unit. It had been accused of killing people illegally in the early 2000s. The head of that unit, or the person who had authority over it, was at the time Major General Johan Booysen. Eventually, he was charged also over the activities of the unit. At the time, he said he was being charged to prevent him from investigating a man called Nkabinde, who was described then as close to then-President Jacob Zuma. Eventually, though, after a long saga, 11 years ago, the charges against Booysen were withdrawn, and the public claims that the Cato Manor police unit had acted as a murder squad were also withdrawn. Then, on Monday, the advocate representing the Joburg prosecution's boss, Andrew Chauke, Tembeka Nkabinde, introduced evidence at the Nkabinde inquiry that a man called Aris Danikas had emailed the current head of the NPA, Batohi, when she took office in 2019. He had asked her to reinstate those charges against Booysen. After Nkabinde introduced that evidence showing that members of this unit had killed a 16-year-old boy who was no threat to the police, Batohi refused to continue her testimony. She left the commission. Yesterday, on this program, we spoke to Danikas about his email to Batohi. He said he had video evidence that members of the Cato Manor unit were involved in these killings. Well, I'm pleased to tell you that Johan Booysen, the person who was in charge of the unit, has agreed to our invitation to respond to these claims. But first, let's hear what was probably the main claim from Aris Danikas when he spoke to us yesterday.
I witnessed torture of suspects. I witnessed executing suspects in cold blood. I witnessed manipulation of crime scenes. And I witnessed the Cato Manor members engaging in illegal activities and running a well-orchestrated enterprise, especially profiting from selling confiscated stolen goods and providing protection or removing dockets from cases.
Johan Booysen, good morning to you. You saw the claim from Danikas there. How do you respond to that?
Well, Stephen, those allegations have been traversed and ventilated ad infinitum, ad nauseum, at various fora, inter alia, in the decision to re-prosecute us by Sean Abrams on their own version. They had obtained the video material from Mr. Danikas, and despite the fact that it had been at their disposal all along. And by the way, let me just make this comment. The so-called video evidence is not authenticated. It's completely irrelevant. No one was prosecuted for any of those alleged atrocities. May I remind you, the one video that was shown might as well have been a scene from Guantanamo Bay, because you cannot distinguish who, what, where, and how that is. Secondly, the second video that was produced, I invite anyone to go and have a look at it and see if anything wrong has been committed on that video. To get back to his allegation that he had written to Advocate Batohi to reinstitute prosecutions, well, I find that a bit amazing. He's not a complainant or a victim. He claims to be a whistleblower, which I seriously doubt, but I would not go into those details. But be that as it may, those videos have been in the public domain since 2008. He has placed it on YouTube. It had been in the possession of the prosecutors. And with regards to the latter issue that you mentioned, the shooting of the youngster, KZN, I think his name was, that matter ended up in court. That's one of the cases where Colonel Padiachi was charged, he was prosecuted. It went to court, and he was found not guilty. He was acquitted.
Okay, but as we heard at the inquiry, particularly in the case of KZN, and there were others, ballistics evidence which showed that the person who had been killed was of no threat to the police when they were shot dead, those ballistics reports were not admitted. This is the point that Nkabinde is making at the inquiry, that the NPA prosecutors should have admitted those reports, and they didn't.
So, Stephen, I cannot comment on behalf of the prosecutors. I think the advocate who did the prosecution in that particular matter should be approached to explain why that evidence was not led. There could be various valid reasons for it not being presented. I don't know whether he had consulted with those experts and whether after the consultation he had deemed it not necessary to to utilize them as witnesses. It could be that the evidence that they were that they would present was not relevant. I cannot answer for the prosecutor. But the fact of the matter is, someone was prosecuted in the matter. It happened in an open court, in a public court, and that person was acquitted.
Just for the record, did you or any members of your unit put pressure on the NPA or work with people in the NPA to make sure these ballistics reports were not admitted?
Can you repeat that question, Stephen?
Sure. Just for the record, did you or any members of your unit or the people you worked with put pressure on the NPA to make sure those ballistics reports were not admitted?
My answer is unequivocally no, absolutely not in the slightest. We've got no authority over the NPA. It would be, it would be foolish for us to ask a prosecutor not to use evidence that's at their disposal. It just doesn't work that way. It's actually laughable to even suggest that.
Okay. One of the other claims that Danikas made yesterday was that you knew about the actions of the unit personally. And let's just hear how he put it so he can speak in his own words.
2004, I witnessed torture at the Cato Manor office. But then I had a small camera, which was like one of the first smartphones that came out. Not everybody knew about them. And because I had a gadget shop, for electronics, I had access to those smartphones. So when I saw that suspect being stripped naked, also an African suspect, stripped naked, complete naked, placed on a chair and start being tortured, then I said, no, this is not for me. So what I did then is, I took my cell phone and I click on a ringtone, so it looked like there was an incoming call. And then I start speaking in Greek. I remember I said, Ela mana, which is basically in Greek, hello mom. So those guys thought, oh, that's stupid Greek, he's talking to his parents. And I turned towards the torture and I managed to get 3 short video clips. Had I been discovered, I won't be here today to talk to you guys. So after that, I went to Booysen and I said, Johan, look what this guy's doing. The man just laughed and said, well, that's how my boys get processed. That's how we solve crimes. Then he told me to give him a copy of that and print him a frame from a laser printer.
Okay, so that's what he said yesterday. Mr. Booysen, did he show you that video then?
It's an emphatic no. He never showed me any such a video. The video that he's brandishing about, his version keeps on changing. Now, apparently I haven't heard him on your show yesterday. I've heard it for the first time now. We alleged that he pretended to have phoned his mother. Now, when I saw the video being presented at the Nkabinde Commission, I'm sure I heard someone in the background shouting. So why wasn't that recorded? I find it amazing that only the relevant stuff that he tries to portray seems to be on the video. But when it comes to the issues like hello mama or things like it, I repeat, if you look at the video, why didn't he even try and attempt to, if it was indeed the case, why didn't he at least try and photograph the faces of the persons that are busy with the so-called atrocities? It's clear from that video, and as I said before, that could have happened any place in the world. You cannot identify. As a matter of fact, I tried my best after seeing this thing on TV at the Nkabinde Commission to try and see if I can perhaps, through watches or clothing or distinguishing tattoos, try and see if I can identify, and I cannot. So the answer to your question is unequivocally no, he's lying.
One of the things that I can't understand with this is why, you and he were friends at one point. Well, that's what he says. Why would he be lying? Why would he be making these claims if they were not true? I can't see any benefit that he would get from that.
Yes, Stephen, so I have already been approached by the evidence leaders at the Nkabinde Commission of Inquiry. I have compiled a comprehensive statement in which I will deal with those questions. There are very valid reasons for him to feel the way that he does, valid according to him, I suppose. And those are the reasons I will ventilate at the Commission. safe to say that there are questions that he needs to answer with regards to his activities in South Africa before he left. And I will explain that. I don't want to preempt my evidence at the inquiry, but I will most definitely reveal that evidence at the Commission of Inquiry.
All right. I mean, I respect the limitations the inquiry might place upon you. Let me try and see if I can get at this in a slightly different way. Is it true that you and he were friends? I think he suggested that, in fact, you had each other's house keys at one point. Is it true that you were friends at one point?
I won't say we had each other's house keys. I stated well, we were friends. Let me make that very clear. We were very good friends. At one stage when I was building my new house, the project could not be finished in time and I needed a place to stay, my wife and myself. And we stayed at his, I think we stayed there for probably 2, 3, 4 months at his place. And we went overseas with him. We visited his parents in Greece. His parents came to visit us. We took them to my wife's timeshare. Yeah, we were good friends. There must have been a falling out at some point. Was there some other factor which led to the falling out? Or was there something that happened in the police unit that you had authority over that led to the falling out? Now, Stephen, I think there were a few things that built up over a period of time, but I think the critical mass issue relates to an issue which I ventilated a number of times. I've even written about it in my book, so you might find a clue there. I see now he's also complaining that he was never afforded an opportunity, or the Altrum Partem opportunity to respond, which is also a fabrication. A letter went to his lawyer before the book was published, and we had no response from them. But yes, there was something that happened, and it relates to something that he had done whilst he was a police reservist, which ultimately led to him being suspended. And from there, I think the relationship deteriorated. But there are more to that.
Okay, and we'll hear more when you testify at the Commission if you're called.
Definitely.
Okay. The email that started this, so the email that started the line of questioning in the inquiry that resulted in the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Jamila Batohi, leaving the inquiry, that email was from Danikas, and he was claiming at the time that you'd been threatening him. Now, the email was sent in 2019. He spoke about this yesterday. Let's hear how he put it yesterday.
Issues there. First of all, I was angry about the way I've been handled. I felt betrayed. I felt used as a scapegoat, because remember now, for all those years, I suffered terrible intimidation, as well as my family. I was stalked for 7 years by Johan Booysen. He was sending me hate letters, messages. He found my cell number, which I never gave to him because I was talking to him from a long time ago, and he found my cell phone number. He hunted down my wife, family, friends, underage kids, and so I was suffering such a character assassination campaign. So that was one issue I addressed. Look, I'm a witness, and this man is, terrorizing me. What are you doing about it?
So that's what he said yesterday. Did you threaten Danikas? Did you threaten members of his family or his friends?
No, I did not. That's a blatant fabrication. I did not threaten him. He's lying.
Okay, so there's no communication or evidence or anything that could come forward?
Just repeat that, Stephen.
So there's no communication or evidence of any communication that could come forward?
There was communication, but he was most definitely not threatened. And so, by the way, I think you should look at the timeline with regards to when he supposedly received WhatsApp, and the timeline that the case was withdrawn.
Okay. Can you remember when the last time you communicated with him was? Directly, I mean.
The last time I would suspect could have been, it was most definitely after the cases were withdrawn. I cannot off the top of my head recall the dates, but it's most definitely after the cases were withdrawn. And if I may add, Stephen, from day one, he the impression that's been created is that he was a witness in the Cato Manor prosecution. He never was a witness. When the prosecution occurred in 2012, and the indictment was served upon the Cato Manor detectives and myself, his name was not on the list of witnesses. That was in 2012. And in 2015, and this is very important, the lead prosecutor in the matter, Advocate Salo Mahema, wrote a letter to Danikas' attorney, informing him that they do not intend using Danikas as a witness. And then in that letter, they signed, it was an email, they cited various reasons. And some of those reasons relates, and I don't want to, because I'm going to be presenting that evidence at the commission, relates to his own credibility and offences that he might have committed. Then subsequent to that, in 2016, when I was re-prosecuted again, after the court had ruled that there was no evidence against me, once again, despite the fact that this time around, Advocate Sean Abrams, in one of his own statements in the review application, wrote that he had considered those videos, and that once again he was left off the list of witnesses. So for all intents and purposes, he was never a witness, and the communication that he alleges were threats. And I mean, from what I've heard at the commission, that absolutely doesn't constitute a threat. To tell a person, you're a coward, come and testify in South Africa. It's actually an invitation to come and state his case in South Africa.
Okay, so, I mean, I agree it's not a threat, but you did call him a coward. I mean, clearly by this stage you weren't friends any longer. I want to just get to another angle on this, if I may. Advocate Shamila Batohi, currently head of the NPA, she was provincial head of the NPA in KwaZulu-Natal from 2000 to 2009. And for much of that time, you held senior positions in the police in KwaZulu-Natal. Did the two of you know each other? I mean, I would imagine professionally you must have met at some point.
So the first time I got to know about Advocate Batohi was when she, I think she was the evidence leader, or she cross-examined Hansie Kroonier. I think it was the King Commission of Inquiry. That's what I knew about her. Later on, I think she might have been the prosecution head in KZN. I was a brigadier at the time. My immediate supervisor at the time was Commissioner Pat Brown, and he on occasions would have to attend meetings at the Justice Forum meeting where I think was Judge Yappi was the chairperson, and respective role players from the criminal justice system. And I think that on two of those occasions he could not make the meetings, and he asked me to represent him at those meetings. Those were the only two times in my entire life that I'd seen her personally and that I interacted with her, but on a professional level at a meeting. That's it.
I'll tell you where I'm going with this. And it doesn't actually involve actions on your part, but I'm trying to understand why the National Director of Public Prosecutions would have walked out of the Nkabinde inquiry, I mean illegally, when this email came up. And what would have made her, I suppose, so scared for her own legal position? She had to seek personal legal advice. I mean, that's the only explanation I can think of. I mean, Is it possible that this line of questioning from Tembeka and Tobi was going to reveal something? I mean, is there anything you know about that was happening at the time? Because it was all based on an email from Danikas about the unit that you had authority over, and it followed the video. I accept that you say that the video has not been authenticated, but it followed questions about the way in which the NPA was dealing with cases that had involved your members.
I don't really get your question, Stephen. Are you asking if that she, or are you? And I don't want to use the word suggest that he suggested that there must have been some type of relationship between myself and Advocate Batohi, and that might be revealed? Well,
I don't think I'd go that far. You were very involved in the situation at the time, in that you had authority over the unit whose members were being accused of these crimes, and in the end you were accused yourself, and the charges were withdrawn, as we know. But when this issue comes up, The National Director of Public Prosecutions breaks the law by leaving the commission. Do you have any possible thought as to why she would have done such a thing? What she would have been so scared of, I suppose, is as far as I can take it.
Stephen, I think you are perhaps seeing something that's not there. I don't think she was scared. I don't want to sit and defend Advocate Batohi, and I don't want to disrespect the commission. I'm going to leave it at that, but I think if you watch the way she had been cross-examined over a period for probably about 2 weeks, I'm not going to say it was hostile, but yes, anyone who watched that can go and watch the entire cross-examination, decide for himself why they suspect she might have left. I can assure you, without any shadow of a doubt, there's absolutely nothing untoward about that particular email.
Okay. The charges against you and based on the claims that you had authority for a unit that was killing people and they were withdrawn 11 years ago. It's a long time ago. I imagine you didn't think you would have to be talking about all of this again. And it's suddenly back in the public domain in the most extraordinary, surprising way. Did it surprise you when suddenly all of this came back again?
Stephen, I just want to go back slightly. That Danikas alleges that I've been harassing him. I think the converse is actually true. He's been carrying on about this issues of his since he left South Africa. I think it was in 2008. And he's been continuously on different fora, and he claims to be a whistleblower, and he calls meetings, and he engages with people in South Africa. And he continuously, on webinars, make these allegations, which have been proven to be untrue over and over again. So I think the converse is true, that he's the one that's actually stalking me. By every time he gets an opportunity on whatever forum, whistleblowers forum, or whatever the case may be, to falsely accuse me.
Okay, so you're not worried that because this is all back in the public domain, the NPA might reinstate charges? I mean, that doesn't concern you after everything that's happened?
Stephen, let me be very clear. Let me say for once and for all, there were 3 statements in 23 dockets. None of those remotely implicate me in anything. They're basically a helicopter crew that made a statement that they flew me to one scene where there was a shooting. Then there's a statement of a police officer whose area that was, the duty officer, who attended to the scene, that says he saw me arriving in a helicopter. There's another statement of a female from IPID, who at the time was ICD. She said that she saw me at one scene, I think it was at the Devon North scene, a couple of hours after the incident occurred. I didn't even go on the scene proper. So those were the only 3 statements that mention me. That is why at the time I took the decision to prosecute me by Advocate Jibber on review. It was only after I took a decision to prosecute me on review that Danikas' statement surfaced. That statement was not signed. It was not commissioned. Up until today, we're talking about 13, 14 years later, the prosecution still do not have an English signed version of his statement. What they do have is a Greek statement which they obtained from him in Greece. It came to South Africa. It was only signed 8 months after Sean Abrams re-prosecuted me. 8 months. I mean, he considered the statement in Greek. I'm not so sure whether he's conversant in Greek, but let's leave it at that. That statement also was only signed 8 months after Abrams authorized my prosecution again. But here's the thing. I continuously and persistently wrote, well, my attorney wrote to Advocate Mahema, and I've got all the proof, asking them, when can we have a signed copy of the English version? Up until today, we never got that. But here's the thing. It came out during the Cock investigation that it was still not signed. And what they did is, on his own admission, I mean, that's what Mahema says, and I find it striking that he makes such an admission. He writes to, I think it was Advocate Chris McAdam, when they questioned him about it, that Advocate Chris McAdam being from the NPA. Mahema writes that they superimposed, in other words, they took the signature from the Greek statement and they superimposed it on a translated statement, despite the fact that Danikas refused to sign that English one, because on his own version, and we've got that in writing, it contained mistakes.
Major General, thank you for your time. I do appreciate you accepting our invitation. Thank you. Major General Johan Booysen is the former head of the Cato Manor Organised Crime Unit. Well, as you know, all of this sparked by the extraordinary events at the Nkabinde inquiry earlier this week.